I think a lot of us are here because we're trying to figure out this whole balancing act.
Mm.
You know, life's demands and how to stay grounded in the midst of it all.
Yeah.
So we're diving deep today into that very question, what does a truly balanced life actually look like?
Yeah.
And we've gone through some fascinating material,
Yeah.
you know, spiritual teachings, practical advice,
Right. Right.
all trying to answer this kind of fundamental question. How do we find that sweet spot,
Yeah.
you know, where we're engaged with the world, but not completely overwhelmed by it. And we're connected to something deeper, but we're not neglecting our everyday responsibilities.
Right.
So today we're really setting out to uncover some clear, actionable steps, hopefully, to help all of us find that balance.
You know, it's interesting because this idea of balance, it pops up across so many different traditions, different
Yeah.
ways of thinking about life. And I think one thing that really stands out is that it's not about achieving like this perfect static equilibrium, you know, like scales that are perfectly level and never move. It's much more dynamic. It's more like a constant dance of adjustments.
That's such a good way to put it, a dance,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
One of the ideas that I found really powerful is the idea that our inner state,
Yeah.
you know, our mind,
Right.
can remain steady and free no matter what our body's doing.
Uh-huh.
Whether we're still in quiet reflection or in the middle of a really busy day,
Right.
it suggests that the key is not just external, but it's internal. It's that anchor.
Yeah. And that actually brings to mind the ancient wisdom of the middle way. You know, like the Buddha's teaching, it's this idea of not going to extremes. So not getting totally lost in pleasure and indulgence, but also not going to the opposite extreme.
Yeah.
You know, denying yourself everything, withdrawing completely from the world.
Right.
It's about finding that healthy middle ground.
And it's illustrated in such simple, relatable ways, you know? Like I was reading about this,
Yeah.
how we use our words.
Mhm.
Like there's a time to speak and a time to be silent.
Yeah.
Right.
Or in nature, like we need sunshine, we need rain.
Yeah.
But too much of either is no good.
Yeah. Too much.
Yeah, it's that sense of just right
Yeah.
in different parts of our life.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how these different perspectives often arrive at similar conclusions.
Yeah.
So I was reading about this teaching about finding honor and purpose in being active in the world, you
Yeah.
know, through service, through contribution, without having to isolate yourself from everyday life.
Right.
It's this idea of being present and engaged right where you are.
So when we kind of break it down to the essentials for creating this balanced life, you know,
Yeah.
what keeps coming up is that there are these three key areas that are constantly kind of interacting.
Right.
And that's our practice of inner reflection, our engagement with our daily responsibilities,
Yeah.
so our worldly life, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
and then the act of selfless contribution or service.
Yeah. And it's important, I think, to understand the emphasis here. So all three are valuable, but that practice of inner reflection is consistently seen as the foundation,
Right.
that central point of stability
Right.
that allows us to navigate the other two effectively.
Okay, so let's dig a little deeper into that middle piece,
Okay.
the worldly life.
Yeah.
What does that actually look like
Yeah.
in practical terms when we talk about balance?
Yeah. So it's really about all those things that make up our day-to-day existence.
Uh-huh.
So earning an honest living,
Right.
taking care of our family,
Yeah.
you know, our responsibilities in the community,
Right.
looking after our physical and mental well-being,
Uh-huh.
even allowing ourselves moments of rest and enjoyment, you
Right.
know? It's about being a responsible, engaged member of the world.
And then there's that aspect of selfless service.
Yeah.
And it is seen as this positive thing,
Yeah.
as a way to contribute.
Right.
But the point seems to be it shouldn't take over, right? To the detriment of the inner reflection or our core responsibilities. It's important, but maybe not the top priority.
Exactly. And that's where we can sometimes stumble
Yeah.
and lose our balance.
Mm.
So there's this really telling example
Okay.
of someone who is incredibly dedicated to helping others, always the first to volunteer, never said no to a request for assistance.
Oh, I'm interested to hear about this
Yeah.
because it sounds like something a lot of us can relate to,
Yeah,
that desire to be helpful.
exactly. And this person was truly remarkable in their willingness to give their time and energy.
Yeah.
They believed they should always be available to help no matter what.
Uh-huh.
Over time, though, they found themselves juggling more and more commitments, constantly feeling stretched thin.
Yeah.
And eventually, something had to give.
Right.
And Unfortunately, it was their time for inner reflection that started to disappear.
Yeah.
Days would go by without any of that essential stillness.
That sounds really draining.
Yeah.
You can see how that could happen, though, right?
Yeah.
Wanting to do good, but then just getting overwhelmed.
Yeah. Exactly. And it didn't stop there.
Oh, no.
This person, already at their limit, took on an even larger responsibility, feeling obligated to say yes. And this was really the tipping point. They became completely overwhelmed.
Right.
They weren't able to properly manage any of their commitments anymore.
Oh, wow.
Their efforts to help actually became less effective. Their personal well-being suffered.
Yeah.
Their family and work life also started to feel the strain. They had completely lost that central balance.
It's a powerful reminder of that interconnectedness. There's a saying, you can't effectively engage with the world if you're neglecting your inner self.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Right.
They really need to support each other.
Exactly. And the trap, I think, is often in thinking that constantly doing more, particularly in service to others, is always the right thing, even if it means sacrificing our own well-being and our inner peace. And I think there can be this underlying pressure, sometimes it's self-imposed, that we should never say no to a request to help.
So, are there actually times when saying no to a request to help is the more balanced and ultimately more helpful thing to do?
Well, the sources would strongly suggest that there are.
Okay.
So if taking on more would compromise our health, if we simply don't have the time without neglecting other crucial areas of our life, or if it would create significant disharmony in our family or work life, then saying no can actually be the wiser, more balanced choice. It's about having a realistic understanding of our own capacity and our own limitations.
And I think it's important to remember, too, that there are real-world consequences to neglecting those core responsibilities, right?
Yeah.
It's not just a vague sense of guilt. It has tangible effects.
Absolutely. Our actions have repercussions.
Right.
If we consistently shook our duties,
Right.
whether it's work, family, whatever it may be, there will be a ripple effect. And I think it raises this really important question. Are we ever using our desire to be of service as a way to avoid facing those other responsibilities?
That's a tough question to ask.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But an important one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so how do we bridge this gap then?
Yeah.
How do we bring together this inner life and our outer everyday existence in a balanced way?
Well, one perspective suggests that all our actions can be seen as part of this larger whole, that there isn't necessarily this rigid division between what we consider worldly work and something more spiritual.
Right.
The key is really the intention.
Yeah.
And the way we approach it.
Okay.
So even something as fundamental as being a good family member, caring for our parents.
Yeah.
That's actually a significant aspect of this balance.
That makes a lot of sense. If things are chaotic or strained in our closest relationships, it's hard to imagine finding any real peace in other areas of our life.
Yeah.
Including, our inner reflection, our ability to really help others.
Exactly. Disharmony in one area tends to spill over.
Yeah.
Similarly, neglecting our health, both physical and mental, will inevitably impact our ability to engage in meaningful inner work and to be truly effective in our service to others in the long run.
Right.
And if we're not responsible in our work, if we're constantly struggling financially, that stress can cloud our minds, make it harder to find that stillness.
It's also interconnected. I was reading about this person who was really struggling with this. They felt so drawn to their spiritual practices that they were neglecting their family responsibilities.
Yeah. And the guidance they received was really to nurture that interconnection deeply, but also to make sure they were fulfilling their obligations to their family.
Okay.
A truly balanced life requires us to attend to both our inner and our outer worlds.
Right.
And crucially, we need to allow ourselves time for rest and rejuvenation.
Rest. Sometimes it feels like a luxury we can't afford.
Yeah.
But it's being presented here as a necessity.
It is, absolutely, Trying to constantly push ourselves without any downtime can be counterproductive.
Right.
Our minds need moments to unwind and recharge. And I think our own inner sense of what feels right, our conscience, is a valuable guide in maintaining this balance.
Okay.
If we start to feel overwhelmed or depleted, that's often our inner voice signaling that we need to make an adjustment.
So it's about being present in the world.
Yeah.
Contributing to it.
Yeah.
Even enjoying it.
Uh-huh.
But always with this underlying awareness of our ultimate direction,
Right.
that inner path we're on.
Exactly. And when we specifically talk about this interplay between selfless service and our inner practice,
Right.
I think it's vital to recognize that while both are ways of giving and contributing, they actually serve different but complementary roles.
Right.
They aren't interchangeable.
So volunteering our time and energy, for example, in the community
Yeah.
isn't a substitute for that personal time of reflection.
It isn't, no. The primary aim of selfless service is often described as helping to create a supportive environment,
Right.
both for ourselves and others.
Uh,
That makes inner reflection more possible.
okay.
It can purify our intentions and open our hearts. But if we only focus on the outward actions and never actually turn our attention inward,
Yeah.
we're missing a crucial piece.
It's like preparing the soil but never planting the seed.
Exactly. The inner practice is often seen as that direct channel for receiving deeper insights and connection.
Okay.
And the ultimate goal is to draw our attention inward towards that place of stillness within.
Right.
And physical service, with its inherent activity and outward focus,
Yeah.
is quite different from cultivating that inner quiet.
That makes sense. You can't really expect to hear that inner voice if you're constantly surrounded by external noise and activity.
Yeah. The analogy often used is if outward actions alone were enough to bring about inner transformation,
Right.
then why would so much emphasis be placed on the need for inner reflection?
Right.
So the very fact that this inner work is so consistently highlighted
Right.
suggests its fundamental importance. Everything else is, in a sense, secondary to that inner connection.
Okay. So how do we actually put this into practice in our everyday lives? It's great to understand the concepts,
Yeah.
but what does it look like when we're trying to find this balance day to day?
Well, a key seems to be adopting a two-pronged approach.
Okay.
First, making a consistent commitment to that daily inner reflection, even if it's for a relatively short period.
Right.
And second, cultivating a shift in our perspective and intention when we engage in our daily tasks and interactions.
So focusing on that first part, the consistent daily inner reflection, what's the core of that?
It's about making it a non-negotiable part of your day.
Okay.
A prioritized time to turn your attention inward, even when life feels incredibly demanding,
All right.
That dedicated time helps to center us and provides a touchstone throughout the day.
Okay.
It's about intentionally connecting with that inner dimension.
And that second part, the shift in how we approach our daily activities.
Yeah.
How did that contribute to balance?
Well, I think it's about recognizing that our inner and outer lives aren't separate compartments.
Yeah.
If we view our spiritual practice, our service to others, and our daily work as completely distinct and sometimes conflicting,
Right.
it creates internal friction. The idea is to start seeing them as interconnected parts of a whole.
So it's about changing our mindset, seeing everything we do through a different lens.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The concept is that both our inner work and our outer actions can be expressions of a larger purpose. When we approach each task, no matter how mundane it might seem, with a sense of mindfulness and intention, as if it were done with a deeper purpose in mind, it transforms that action. It becomes a form of service in itself.
So powerful. Right. Instead of just going through the motions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of chores or work.
Yeah.
We're doing it with a different kind of underlying motivation.
Exactly. And it's about keeping that connection in our awareness throughout the day.
Right.
Not just during our dedicated time of inner reflection. Imagine it as having that inner sense of purpose radiating outwards into everything we do.
Yeah.
It's about integrating that mindful or even prayerful attitude into our everyday activities.
It reminds me of that idea of being fully present.
Yeah.
In whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Whether it's something traditionally seen as spiritual
Uh-huh.
or just a regular part of life.
Yeah. And the advice is often to carry that inner awareness with you as you go about your day.
Okay.
Performing your duties with that connection in mind. When that inner awareness is present, even ordinary tasks can become more meaningful, and the mind experiences less of that restless feeling of being pulled in different directions, So there's this growing realization that those inner and outer aspects of life aren't really separate at all.
So service isn't just about those formal acts of volunteering.
Right.
It's this broader idea that encompasses our inner practice,
Yeah.
our outward actions, even our daily work, all when performed with the right intention and awareness.
Exactly. And I think as that interconnection deepens and that mindful awareness becomes more consistent,
Yeah.
our whole life gradually takes on more of a quality of service,
Yeah.
where those artificial boundaries between inner and outer begin to dissolve. The inner practice becomes not just something we do for a set period,
Right.
but a way of being that influences all our interactions and activities.
It's about finding a sense of liberation within the everyday.
Uh-huh.
You know, even in simple things like laughing, spending time with loved ones, eating,
Right.
it's a gradual unfolding,
Yeah.
a learning through the experience of living. And finally, there's a recognition of the natural rhythms of balance.
Yeah.
It's not about achieving some fixed state and staying there.
Right.
It's about understanding that life has its ebbs and flows,
Yeah.
periods of activity and stillness,
Uh-huh.
engagement and withdrawal.
Yeah, like the natural movement of breathing in and breathing out, or the changing seasons.
Right.
There's this constant cycle.
So there will be times of outward activity and times for inward reflection.
Yeah.
There will be moments of comfort and moments of challenge.
Yeah.
The key is to recognize these as natural parts of the process and to navigate them with awareness,
Yeah.
without getting too attached to one extreme or resisting the other.
Uh.
The goal is to kind of move through these different aspects of life
Yeah.
with a sense of presence and acceptance.
It all comes back to that idea of harmony.
Yeah.
When our inner self, our thoughts, our actions are all aligned and working together,
Yeah.
the result is that deeper sense of peace,
Right.
happiness,
Uh-huh.
and a truly meaningful life.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into finding a balanced life, the core message seems to be to prioritize that inner connection
Yeah.
through consistent reflection
Right.
and then bringing that sense of awareness and purpose into all aspects of our daily lives.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. It's about seeing our actions, whether they're big or small,
Right.
through a lens of intention and mindfulness.
Yeah, and it's not about chasing some perfect, unattainable ideal of balance.
Right.
It's about recognizing that dynamic nature of life
Right.
and finding our own center within that constant movement.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What if the secret to a more fulfilling life isn't about constantly striving to do more, but about bringing a different kind of attention and intention to everything we're already doing?
It's a profound question to contemplate.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for exploring this with me.
Yeah.
We encourage you to take a moment, reflect on your own sense of balance. Maybe identify one small step that you can take today. Yeah. To bring a little more of this understanding into your daily life. Until our next deep dive.